My phone pinged with a WhatsApp message. I expected another excuse from Eric, probably something about staying late at the office. But the words I saw made my hands go still. "I'm done with you, moving to LA with my new girl. You'd better check our savings account." Then I smiled. "Good for you," I typed back, followed by a thumbs up emoji. Eric thought he'd blindsided me. He thought I'd be broken. But what he didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this moment for months. I had evidence, allies, and a plan. He thought he was escaping with his new girl and a stolen fortune. He had no idea I was already 3 steps ahead. My name is Lucy Winters. I've been married to a liar for 18 years. But now, it's my turn to set the terms. My name is Lucy Winters. I'm 42 years old, a real estate agent in Sacramento, and the mother of 2 incredible teenagers. Zoe is 16, thoughtful and sharp like her grandmother, and Jason is 14, all heart and mischief. For the past 18 years, I've been married to Eric, a man I once believed was my partner in every sense of the word. I met in college. He was a smooth-talking business major with big dreams and perfect teeth, and I was a journalism student, chasing truth and storytelling with my whole heart. But after graduation, his job offer came with a cross-country move, and I made the choice I thought was right at the time. I followed him. I put my career on hold, traded journalism for diaper bags, and poured myself into building a stable home for our family. Eric's career took off quickly. He was charming, polished, and relentlessly ambitious. Promotions, business trips, lavish bonuses, they came in waves. I stayed back, managed the home, hosted dinner parties, volunteered at the kids' schools, and made sure our lives looked picture-perfect from the outside. When Jason started kindergarten, I decided to carve something of my own. Real estate gave me flexibility and financial autonomy. I worked hard, closed deals, and slowly built a name for myself. But Eric changed. Or maybe I just stopped pretending he hadn't. He grew colder, more distant. He criticized everything: my hair, my job, my parenting, my voice. At first I took it as stress from work. Then came the perfume on his shirts, the unfamiliar credit card charges, the phone that never left his side. Confronted him once, years ago, when I found a receipt for a gold bracelet I never received. He told me it was a surprise for my birthday. It was 3 months away. Still, I smiled, nodded, and chose to believe him, because the alternative was too painful. But last Christmas, something inside me snapped. He was supposed to fly back for our family dinner. At the last minute, he called, claiming weather delays. That night, I checked the airline website. There were no delays, no cancellations, no Eric. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. Just stared at the screen and realized I wasn't imagining things. I was watching my marriage quietly unravel, thread by thread. From that moment, I shifted. I became an observer, not a participant. I noticed the locked file cabinets in his home office, the alternate credit card I never saw statements for, the whispered calls he took in the garage. I started documenting everything: dates, receipts, voicemails, even what he wore when he left. I wasn't emotional. I was French financial fraud, marital asset protection, even forensic accounting. I reached out to a friend of a friend who connected me with Harold Barnes, a private investigator. We met discreetly. I handed over what I had. 2 weeks later, he handed me back a folder filled with truth, photos, lies in black and white. Eric thinks I'm passive, forgettable. He calls me Lucy, the safe wife, the one who never asks questions, who folds laundry and smiles through the betrayal. But he doesn't know who I've become. I may not yell, I may not fight in public, but I don't lose, and I don't forget. I've spent 18 years playing by his rules, staying quiet to keep the peace. But now, peace is the last thing I'm after. I'm after justice, and Eric has no idea what's coming. Eric wasn't always this cold. At least that's what I used to tell myself. In the early years of our marriage, I mistook his distance for ambition, his forgetfulness for stress, and his criticism for honesty. I ignored the little signs because I wanted so badly to believe we were building something real. Looking back, I realized those signs were never little. They were warnings I buried to protect the image of our perfect family. The first time I truly doubted him was 7 years ago. I was doing laundry and found a receipt in his coat pocket, a luxury bracelet from a high-end boutique. It was dated 2 days before our anniversary, but I never received a bracelet. When I asked, he said it was for my birthday. My birthday was 3 months away. He kissed my forehead, called me paranoid, and told me to be patient. I felt silly for even. That night, I made his favorite dinner and told myself to stop being insecure. The doubts kept growing. Perfume that wasn't mine. Weekend conferences that didn't appear on his calendar. Credit card bills that arrived electronically, never by mail. I'd ask questions and he'd brush me off with lines like, "You're imagining things," or "You sound crazy, Lucy." It got to the point where I began questioning my own sanity. He made me believe I was the problem, so I stopped asking and focused on the kids, the house, my career. I became the quiet wife who didn't make waves. Still, my gut never stopped whispering. Then came last Christmas. Eric swore he'd be home for the holidays. He even promised to bring the kids special gifts from New York. But an hour before dinner, he called to say his flight was canceled due to bad weather. I felt a familiar sting, but told him it was okay. After the kids went to bed, I poured a glass of wine and checked the airline website. Not a single cancellation. His flight had landed on time. That's when the dam broke. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring at the screen, letting it sink in. He was lying, and he had been for a long time. That night, I made a decision. No more denial, no more silence. I started going through his emails, tracking his movements, logging every suspicious transaction. I opened a private account and began funneling my commission checks away from our joint account. I contacted Harold, the private investigator, and handed over every scrap of information I'd collected. Within 2 weeks, he confirmed what I already feared. Eric was cheating. But worse, he was hiding money. Offshore accounts, shell corporations, even a secret apartment. This wasn't just infidelity. It was a coordinated plan to abandon me and take everything with him. I had spent years playing the role of the doting wife. Now, I was going to rewrite that script. I wasn't just going to survive Eric's betrayal. I was going to make sure he regretted ever underestimating me. The turning point came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I was passing Eric's home office to drop off laundry when I heard him laugh on the phone. His voice was casual, smug, the way it got when he thought no one was listening. "She doesn't suspect a thing," he said. "Lucy's not exactly smart, babe." For a moment, I stood frozen, clutching a laundry basket filled with clean shirts for a man who thought I was too stupid to see what he was doing. That was the moment something inside me shifted. I didn't cry. I didn't barge in. I turned away and walked back to my bedroom, my mind already racing. The next morning, I reached out to Harold Barnes, a former police detective turned private investigator. I'd been referred to him by a friend of mine, an attorney who described him as relentless and discreet. We met at a quiet coffee shop across town. "You were right," he said simply. Inside were photos of Eric with not one, not two, but 3 different women, one of whom was his marketing director. There were time-stamped images, hotel logs, and surveillance stills outside a luxury apartment registered to an LLC. "He takes women there at least twice a week," Harold added. "And that's not all." He handed me another stack of documents. They showed wire transfers to offshore accounts, credit card bills tied to shell companies, and a separate passport. "He's been building an escape plan," Harold said. "A well-funded one." That night, I stared at the ceiling, the weight of 18 years pressing down on me. But there was no sadness, only clarity. Eric had made his move. Now it was my turn. I needed more than just evidence. I needed leverage. So I called Olivia Perkins, a top divorce attorney in Sacramento with a reputation for tearing apart men like Eric in court. She didn't smile when she reviewed Harold's findings. She smirked. "This," she said, tapping the stack of documents. "We can bury him. But if you want to scorch the earth, I have one question. How far are you willing to go?" "As far as it takes." Enter Jasmine. She was 22, stunning and desperate for a break. I found her through a friend who taught acting classes at a local theater school. Jasmine had the perfect mix of beauty, charm, and performance instinct. I offered her a generous retainer to play a role, the eager young woman drawn to power and money. Her job? Get close to Eric, earn his trust, get him talking, and report back. I wasn't just going to expose Eric, I was going to let him walk right into his own downfall. For months, he'd played the puppet master. Now, it was my turn to pull the strings. With Olivia, Harold, and Jasmine in place, the stage was set. All I had to do was wait. And watch. 3 months into the operation, Harold handed me a USB drive. "You'll want to listen to this alone," he said. That night, after the kids had gone to bed, I plugged it into my laptop. The first voice I heard was Eric's, clear, smug, and completely unaware he was being recorded. "She's such a fool," he said to Jasmine. 18 years, and she still thinks those business trips are real. Meanwhile, I've got accounts she doesn't even know exist. My heart pounded. But it wasn't just the lies. It was the pride in his voice, the amusement at how thoroughly he believed he'd outsmarted me. "How much have you saved?" Jasmine asked, her tone sweet and curious. "Over 2 million so far, closer to 3 by next month. It's all tucked away. Cayman, Singapore, couple of places she couldn't find with a map." He laughed. "Once it's settled, I'm filing and cutting her loose." I sat motionless, hands clenched in my lap. I thought I was ready for anything. But hearing him talk about abandoning me like I was disposable, was like a knife to the chest. Then came the worst part. "What about your kids?" Jasmine asked. Eric didn't even hesitate. "They're almost grown. She can have custody. Less child support that way. I'll just send money for college later so I look like the generous dad. Win-win." I couldn't breathe. My ears rang. He wasn't just planning to discard me. He was planning to dump his responsibilities as a father. Jason was 14. Zoe was 16. They still needed him. And he was walking away without a second thought. That's when I realized this wasn't just about betrayal. It was about cruelty. Systematic, strategic cruelty. And I wasn't going to let him win. I played the rest of the recordings. More bragging, more plans, mentions of properties in Nevada, Florida, even a luxury condo in Miami under a different name. Jasmine had coaxed it all out of him, recording every detail. He even talked about transferring money to her for a shared future in LA. He was willing to risk everything for a woman he thought he controlled. A woman he didn't know I paid by the hour. Later that week, Harold connected me with Thomas Geller, a forensic accountant. Within 10 days, Thomas had traced $3,400,000, 0 cents, in hidden assets. "Easily the funniest quick thing," Thomas said, "but arrogant. That's where he slips." I didn't cry that night. I stared at my ceiling again. But this time, there was no sadness, just resolve. My marriage hadn't ended this year. It had ended years ago. I just hadn't seen it yet. So, I stopped mourning it. Eric had counted on me to be broken, scattered, emotional. What he didn't count on was the quiet fury that comes from knowing the truth. The kind of fury that moves slowly, precisely, and legally. This wasn't about revenge. This was about justice. My children deserved stability. I deserved dignity. And Eric? He deserved everything coming to him. He thought he was playing chess. He never realized I'd already flipped the board. Lucy knew that the final phase of her plan required subtlety, patience, and the art of performance. If Eric even suspected she was onto him, he'd vanish with the money, and she might never see a cent. So she played the part. At home, she started forgetting things, missing appointments, leaving dishes in the sink. She skipped 2 showings in a row and left empty wine bottles in this recycling bin. She acted exactly how a devastated, blindsided wife would behave, exactly how Eric expected her to. Meanwhile, Jasmine played her role flawlessly. She fed Eric compliments about his brilliance, encouraged him to act fast, and kept him talking. Every time he boasted about a new transfer, Jasmine passed the information to Harold and Thomas. Lucy fed false signals, letting Eric overhear her on the phone in a panic about the mortgage, leaving a bank slip where he could find it showing her account nearly empty. She even printed fake apartment listings and left them out, as if she were preparing to move out in desperation. With Olivia's help, Lucy created a decoy savings account. She made small transfers from their joint account and then staged an emotional breakdown about trying to save something for the kids. Eric didn't suspect a thing. If anything, he seemed relieved, thinking her plan would be better if they... Lucy pretended to agree. "Maybe you're right," she said softly one night. "Maybe I just need time away." That's when Jasmine planted the final seed. "Do you ever think about LA?" she asked Eric over drinks. "Fresh start, warmer weather. I have friends there who could help us get settled." Eric jumped at the idea. Within days, he had booked 2 first-class tickets. He'd drained their joint account, charged luxury hotel reservations on their credit cards, and sent Jasmine a $25,000, 0-cent gift for shopping. Just hours before they boarded the plane, Lucy met with Olivia and filed an emergency petition to freeze all of Eric's known assets. Based on the mountain of evidence, the judge signed off without hesitation. By the time Eric and Jasmine were sipping champagne at 35,000 feet, everything was already in motion. Olivia had served notices to banks, flagged property deeds, and begun the formal divorce filing. Harold was in contact with an old friend in the LAPD. Thomas had already traced and documented the final wire transfers. As Eric and Jasmine sat down for dinner in Beverly Hills, 2 plainclothes officers approached the table. "Mr. Winters, we need to ask you a few questions regarding suspicious financial activity linked to shared marital accounts." Eric's smile disappeared. According to Jasmine's final message, his face turned pale, and his hands trembled as he fumbled for excuses. The officers didn't arrest him, just asked pointed questions and left him sweating. It was just enough to trigger panic. That night, Jasmine disappeared. No warning, no call. She left behind a short note on hotel stationery. "I don't date broke men. P. Lucy says hello." Eric's rage exploded. He called Lucy repeatedly. She didn't answer. He emailed, left voicemails, even tried to FaceTime the kids. All were ignored. The next morning, when he returned to Sacramento, he found the locks changed, his clothes boxed in the garage, and divorce papers waiting for him. Lucy didn't even come to the door. She simply sent a text. "Communication goes through my attorney now. Good luck." Eric finally understood. He'd never been in control. Not of the money, not of the narrative, not of Lucy. He had walked into every trap, confessed every crime, transferred every dollar right into the hands of the woman he thought he'd outsmarted. And now, she was just getting started. Eric came back to Sacramento expecting damage control. What he found was absolute devastation. His own. The house was no longer his. The locks had been changed. The joint accounts were frozen. Even his personal credit cards had been shut down. Divorce papers sat on the doorstep in a neat folder, stamped, signed, and filed. Everything he thought he controlled had been stripped from him in a single, calculated sweep. Lucy didn't speak to him. Every message he sent received an automated response. "Please direct all communication to my attorney, Olivia Grant." When Eric finally saw her in court, she didn't flinch. Dressed in a slate gray suit, Lucy radiated composure. Not anger, not vengeance, just quiet, immovable strength. Olivia began with evidence: receipts, wire transfers, recorded calls, and sworn affidavits. She laid out a timeline that made it impossible for Eric to spin the story. His lawyer, Bernard, tried to object. The judge shut him down. Then came the child custody evaluation. Reports showed Lucy's consistent care and emotional stability, while Eric's plans to abandon custody for life in LA with Jasmine made his priorities clear. He stammered something about misunderstandings, but the court wasn't interested in excuses. "Mr. Winters," the judge said, "your financial and parental misconduct is not only troubling, it's strategic. The court finds sufficient evidence of fraud, deception, and attempted abandonment." Eric's face went pale. His hands trembled as the judge continued. "This court awards Lucy Winters primary custody of both children, sole ownership of the family home, and 70% of all shared marital assets. Child support will be paid monthly in the amount of $3,200.00. The defendant's offshore assets will be reviewed under state and federal investigation." Eric turned to look at Lucy. Her eyes didn't meet his. She was already looking forward. Outside the courthouse, Olivia hugged her client. "You earned every piece of this," she said. Lucy didn't celebrate with champagne. She didn't gloat. She took Zoe and Jason out for burgers, just the three of them. That night, she stood in the kitchen of the home she had fought for and looked around at the photos. The walls she had painted, the life she had built. It was hers again. The media caught wind of the story once court filings went public. Local outlets picked up the narrative of a real estate agent who outsmarted her cheating husband and uncovered millions in hidden funds. Lucy declined interviews. She was interested in peace. A few weeks later, she received an offer from a boutique firm in San Francisco. They wanted her to lead their residential property team. She negotiated higher pay, flexible hours, and the ability to work from home part of the week. Eric, meanwhile, became a cautionary tale. His former employer conducted an internal audit. Jasmine had disappeared completely. His assets were frozen, his name flagged, and his reputation ruined. Lucy didn't need revenge anymore. She had what mattered. A home, a future, and her voice. For years, she'd been told to be quiet, to be grateful, to make it work. But now she knew better. She didn't just survive Eric's betrayal. She buried his illusion of power and rose in its place. 7 months later, Lucy stood in the middle of her new office. Glass windows, soft lighting, and a bold sign on the wall that read, "Empower Realty." She wasn't just back in real estate. She owned the firm, and every inch of it reflected her journey. From the quiet beige of her old life, to the rich blues and earth tones now lining the office, everything had changed. Zoe, now 17, stopped by after school one afternoon and looked around. "It feels like you," she said, touching one of the framed quotes on the wall. "Build the life they tried to steal." Lucy smiled and nodded. That quote wasn't just decor. It was a vow. The betrayal still stung sometimes. There were moments, late at night, when she would remember something Eric said or did and feel that wave of disbelief all over again. But it didn't paralyze her anymore. She didn't feel ashamed or broken. She felt free. She had learned how to spot lies and set boundaries. She had learned how to trust her instincts again. And most importantly, she had learned that survival wasn't enough. She wanted more. For herself, and for every woman who had ever been left behind with nothing but unpaid bills and broken promises. That's why she built Empower Realty. Not just as a brokerage, but as a movement. She hired women returning to the workforce, trained single mothers in property management, and partnered with shelters to provide homeownership workshops. Real estate was no longer just a job. It was her legacy. Jason, now 15, didn't talk much about Eric. He was busy with school, soccer, and learning how to drive. But every so often, he would say something like, "You've got this, Mom." And Lucy knew he saw the transformation too. Eric had faded into the background. Occasionally, a bill or legal form would arrive with his name on it, but that was it. He was no longer a looming shadow. He was just a lesson. One afternoon, Lucy sat down to write a blog post for her firm's website. She titled it, "The Cost of Silence." She didn't name names or give details, but she shared the truth, that she had once given up everything for a man who had been planning his exit for years. That she rebuilt her life not through rage, but through strategy, patience, and vision. And that betrayal doesn't have to end your story, it can rewrite. That post went viral. Emails poured in from women across the country. Some thanked her, others shared their own stories, and a few asked how to start over. Lucy responded to every single one. Because in the end, her story wasn't just about Eric's betrayal, it was about what came after. About choosing to rise, even when everything had fallen apart. Lucy Winters didn't just survive a cheating story. She transformed it into a blueprint for power, peace, and personal freedom. They tried to leave me with nothing, but I left with everything that mattered. Not just the house, the custody, or the accounts. I left with my voice, my dignity, and the future I built with my own hands. My name is Lucy Winters. I was married to a liar for 18 years. I supported his dreams, raised our children, built our life. And when he thought he could discard me and run off with someone younger, I didn't scream. I strategized. I gathered my team. I took back what was mine. I divorced him on my terms. This isn't just a cheating story. It's a story of awakening, of power reclaimed. If you've ever been made to feel small, silent, or stuck, just know, you can plan your way out. You don't need to match their cruelty. Just outthink it. And when they least expect it, you rise. Subscribe to Veiled Fury for more real stories of women reclaiming power after betrayal. These aren't tales of weakness. They're blueprints for freedom, justice, and strength. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well, living free, and never letting someone else write your ending.